In 1917, a forceful leader took control of Russian government. In 70 years, his followers transformed their nation into a military superpower. This man's name was Lenin, and for close to a century, you could find his statue in hundreds of cities throughout the Soviet Union. But the Soviet government showed little concern for the human cost of its achievement, controlling its neighbors through military force and withholding human rights from its own citizens. In August of 1991, with all the world watching, the Soviet people took to their streets to challenge their own government. Today, you find statues of Lenin in scrapyards, abandoned, as reformers in Russia work for something new, to transform what remains of a military state into a modern, democratic society. For peace and stability throughout the world, developed nations are helping in this effort to keep Russia from returning to its troubled past. Before 1991, the Soviet system offered few choices to its people. Every farm, every store, and every factory received its orders from Moscow. In the Soviet system, individuals could not participate in their government. All important decisions were made here, in the Kremlin. Over time, this oppressive system destroyed the Soviet economy. And while ordinary people suffered many hardships, they were not permitted to speak openly. Not until the arrival of Mikhail Gorbachev in 1985. A different kind of Soviet leader, Gorbachev began a policy he called glasnost, a Russian word that means openness. Touring the country, he asked people to speak out, to say what was really on their minds, to admit what they feared from the system, and to express what they really wanted from their government.
When I was 15 and that began new ideas in Lithuania, it was like a fresh air.
I hope that things will change very quickly. There will be more consuming goods and everything, and that there will be just more, people will have more hope and more purpose in their lives.
The Soviet people trusted Gorbachev, and they told him what they really wanted most of all: independence from Soviet control. The Soviet Union was recognized as one country throughout the world. In fact, it was a forced union of 15 separate republics. The Muslim republics of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenia, Kyrgyzia, and Kazakhstan. The Caucasian republics of Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. The Slavic republics of the Ukraine, Moldova, Russia, and Belorussia, and the Baltic republics of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Of these 15, the most assertive were the Baltic republics, and among these three, the most defiant was Lithuania. On March 11th of 1990, the Republic of Lithuania set a brave example for other Soviet republics by declaring its independence from centralized control.
It was something new in our society, in our life. People who began to say what they want, and we had a lot of meetings at that time. All Lithuania, all our people from various places of Lithuania came to Vilnius, and we had a lot of meetings. We were together, and we felt such a strange feeling that we are together, that we can do something together.
We are another nation, and we want to be independent normally as in other countries.
The majority of population was supporting the processes in Baltic states, because those processes showed actually the way how to get rid of communism, how to try to build a new economic system, and so there was a strong support.
All the Lithuanians began thinking about independence. It was quite unexpected, I think, for Gorbachev and for Soviet government. But everyone was happy, and everyone had a great hope about that.
The independence movement in Lithuania took Gorbachev by surprise. He traveled to Vilnius, the capital, and met with local citizens, but he could not convince them to stay within the Union. When his discussions failed, he ordered economic sanctions to punish the defiant republic.
We were told that we will not get independence, that it was only our dream, but it's not realistic and it's not useful. We were taught that it's not important.
And they didn't supply Lithuania anymore with gas, with petrol and metal, wood, and all the resources we needed. And on the other hand, Lithuania went on honoring all the contracts it had signed. And actually this blockade failed, because nothing happened. Because people started to bring petrol and all the resources themselves from Russia, from Belarus and other republics.
The Lithuanian people could not be intimidated through economic pressure. Gorbachev's plan was failing, and Soviet military leaders were losing patience. These military leaders decided to settle matters in their own way, with a military invasion.
Some kind of committee declared that it's taking all the power in the whole Lithuania, and that Soviet troops are going to support it. And they tried to take all the buildings which were the main, like TV tower, TV station, radio station, and the purpose was to cut Lithuania from any relation to any connection to other countries.
It's like always during the war, a war, when you want to take country or to take a town, you must take something, the points that are most important for this country or town. And in Vilnius it was very important to take all our broadcasting systems, and I mean our TV shower and TV buildings.
And I was really terrified and shocked hearing these things. I thought it was the end of our independence.
It was night, and first of all, there were a lot of people. They had made a circle around the TV tower, and they were ready to resist to any attempt to get in. And Soviets came with tanks, and from another side of the TV tower, and people didn't expect them to come from that side.
Of course, they were thinking that something is gonna happen, maybe, but no one there was thinking that all that will be so serious. And till now, I remember the minute when we were sitting near this speaker and listening to music, and at the same moment we heard coming tanks, and all that was, something very different, music and tanks, and that have made us more serious after that night.
The people who was near this near TV station, they think that it was not real, that the army can use the real bullets to shoot the crowd. It was something impossible. We cannot imagine this. And some of the people shouted that don't afraid, it's not the real bullets, and you may stand normally. And the troops start shooting.
Bullets were real. And so 13 people were shot, they were killed, and one of them, the girl, she got under the tank, and the tank went over her.
At this point, it was killed a young woman, young 90 years woman, like all the students like me, younger than me, and in that event was killed only the young people, only the 16, 25.
And at this time I was just, I felt terrible. I was just sitting in our big armchair before TV set, and I was crying and I could do nothing.
The Lithuanian people succeeded in stalling the Soviets, and journalists broadcast pictures of the attack, but eventually the tanks broke through. After the main transmitter was taken, the people reassembled at their parliament building for one last stand. From this small transmitter, the Lithuanian government continued to broadcast pictures in the hopes that world pressure would force the Soviets to back down.
They went to Parliament House at the same time, just after Russians took the TV tower, and I don't know, there were maybe hundreds of thousands of people waiting, and they were ready to everything.
They came to defend our government, our state, our parliament. It's our freedom.
There were people from all Lithuania. They went by buses, by their own cars to Vilnius.
And most of the people, why they come for 300 kilometers from another part of the Lithuania to stand near the parliament? It seems stupid, but I have only one choice, to do something for my country. And it was the one choice. I must stand here.
They thought the more people are around Parliament, the less possibility to be attacked, because too much blood, and not so nice for Soviet Union. It's in fact not so nice, and all the world will be against such blood and so on. So it didn't happen.
They didn't try to get into using troops, because they knew that in case if they tried, the people wouldn't let them in. They would better die.
We were all together, and for example, I wasn't afraid to be sent somewhere to Russia for all these events. I wasn't afraid. I believe that everything will be okay.
When Gorbachev learned of the deaths in Lithuania, He criticized local commanders, and he ordered the military to withdraw. The standoff was over. The Lithuanian people had resisted the invasion, and other Soviet republics were learning by example. The Union was in disarray, and military leaders blamed Gorbachev. Too much freedom, they said, too quickly. At the same time, Gorbachev was having serious problems with the Soviet economy. To go along with his policy of glasnost, he had promised perestroika, a plan to restructure desperate Soviet industries. But perestroika was failing. The economy was getting worse, and the people were growing impatient. Not enough freedom, they said. Not quickly enough.
I really hope that things will be better. There will be more freedom. Really, it became more free, but I thought that there will be so many private business, and very quickly there will be only private business.
3 years of Gorbachev, first 3 years, I think 1986, 87, 88 were great. But Gorbachev didn't make reforms, economic reforms. That's why he could not change the lives of people.
By August of 1991, the Soviet military had run out of patience. They decided to take control, to overthrow Gorbachev's government with a military coup d'etat. Gorbachev was held prisoner, and the Soviet military ordered mechanized forces to the capital of Moscow.
I looked out of the window, and as I live in the center of the city, I saw some tanks that were going down my street, and it was like a nightmare, you know, because I just couldn't imagine that a thing like that can happen. I thought it was just a bad dream, a nightmare. But then, as a journalist, I became very interested in it. And I called my friend back and I said, hey, let's go out on outdoors. Let's see what is happening. Let's see what's going on. And we take a walk down the center. And it was very interesting because everybody was shouting. Everybody was pointing at the tanks. And we even talked to the guys who were at the tanks, and they couldn't understand what is going on. It was just young boys, and they had an order to get into the tanks and to go to the Kremlin, and they didn't know nothing about what is going on.
At first, I was scared because I thought that it will be returning of the communist power. Some of people tried to stop the troops. Everybody tried to do something.
These 3 days we live in horror. We were here to protect our city first, and then Russia, of course.
I didn't like this time, so all people were very nervous. I was very nervous too, because we didn't want, and I didn't want to live in times before Gorbachev. Yes. So, and people believed to Yeltsin.
As people fought in the streets, Russian President Boris Yeltsin contacted leaders throughout the world. He declared himself the acting authority in the Soviet Union, and he ordered the Soviet military to return Gorbachev to power. Yeltsin was the only Russian leader who had ever been elected, and his popularity surprised the leaders of the coup. While Yeltsin stood firm, the military coup collapsed.
That was not a serious coup. I mean, they even didn't think seriously about what the next step is going to be. They just did it because, you know, for the sake of doing it, they did it. They did the coup, all right. But what are we going to do next? And I'm sure they didn't know what they were going to do next. They were frightened to kill Yeltsin. They were frightened to start shooting. And they were not serious about it.
I don't think that the coup would have succeeded because you cannot change things. You know, once people get freedom, they don't want to lose it.
After the coup failed, with the military in discredit, the Baltic republics attained their independence, and they were soon followed by the other 12 republics in the Soviet Union. The Union was disbanded. Mikhail Gorbachev was forced to retire, and Boris Yeltsin, the elected president of Russia, became commander-in-chief of the former Soviet military.
I was so happy. And really, it happened in Moscow, somewhere in Moscow, and maybe that's not my business, I can say, but I was also surprised myself that how happy I was at the time.
Then it was clear that it was the end, that it was independence, because in a few days we were recognized by all the main countries of the world, and we became independent.
Everybody was celebrating, you know, and everybody was so kind and, you know, friendly and happy, but it finished in 2 weeks because of our life, because of our situation, you know, economical situation and other things that are in everyday life and that, you know, you have to think about.
We can't change the whole population of this country. That's a very important thing to understand, especially coming from the West, because it seems like, you know, everything changed here. No, people are the same, and that's the main thing. People cannot change as easily as the sign on the, you know, university or institution or shop can be changed.
You know, I think that I will be not wrong if I say that a lot of people now are lost, and they even say that the independence is well, but all economical situation is so bad that they can't even stand this situation.
People in general do not eat enough meat, do not eat enough vegetables, do not eat enough dairy products, have more or less enough bread, and maybe pastas or potatoes or that food which can be stored for a long time.
Sometimes when I watch TV, I can hear that kind of people like saying that they want Communist Party back and, you know, system back, and it was so good because they had vodka and bread and they could, you know. And now people are hungry and, you know, all these problems.
They just got used to the order that was several years ago, and they think that if the Union will be restored, everything will come back to their places, like it was 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 50 years ago,
but I think they're mistaken. We have to find another way of changing our life.
To help the former Soviet people to keep the country from returning to its military past, Western nations are providing several forms of assistance, including special volunteers from the United States Peace Corps.
I was in the Peace Corps in Poland, and I came here to work as a language coordinator for the Peace Corps volunteers here in Vilnius. So I finished my service there, and I came here about a month and a half ago, right from Warsaw.
I'm learning pretty much of American, say, culture and the approach to different kinds of things, to different people, and of course English. I'm developing my English.
Maybe they can give examples of their experience because they were working in some places and they know how to run business and we don't know it. And I think they'll help.
Western businesses are finding profits in the former Soviet Union and at the same time providing a boost to the region's economy. Many of these joint ventures involve large corporations, but at the same time, young entrepreneurs with innovative ideas are also finding profits and creating jobs.
I was at dinner with some Americans, friends of mine, and some Russians, and we were just talking about how difficult it is to get in this country and how for most people the only way to get in here is to pay the state travel agency here called Tourist $100 a night or so to stay in a terrible hotel. They had a monopoly on the entire tourism here. And so we decided, you know, why can't there be a youth hostel here like there is in other parts of Europe and even Eastern Europe? So we came up with the idea and decided we'd try it, and the next 6 months went through a mountain of paperwork and managed to get it open.
Now I am working with youth hostel idea in Estonia, and in this year we established a youth hostel association. I think I like to organize some new thing, and it was very new, very interesting for me, and that's why I take it, because I wanted to know what could I do. Could I make it?
My generation was the first generation of unfrightened children who didn't care and did not want to care about all this Soviet system garbage, which was absolutely extra thing in our life, and we just didn't want to think about it. We did not want to think about all this threat about KGB, about what would Soviet embassy think about me going to Edinburgh, about me speaking to lots of English people of my generation. I just didn't want to think about it, and I didn't. I mean, I feel very happy because I'm a free man. I don't feel I'm coming from a sort of country of prisoners, although it is my social background. I mean, I do know that I'm coming from this country, and I'm trying to comprehend it all.
It's good that we have an opportunity to have contacts with foreigners and to travel, and it's very good.
I think it's no way back. And well, maybe at this time I don't like a lot of things what happens here, and a lot of things what our government does and maybe doesn't do and so on. But just not going back.
During the long, hot summer of 1914, the old order in Europe seemed firmly established. Europe's monarchs were confident, proud, and closely linked by marriage and descent. Tsar Nicholas of Russia was the King of England's first cousin. The Emperor of Germany was Queen Victoria's grandson and shared the King of England's carriage on many occasions. All this emphasized the pan-European inheritance and awareness of a common civilization that was also symbolized by the Entente Cordiale between the two old enemies, England and France. In 1914, Europeans commanded a culture that had spread throughout the globe. European civilization dominated the world, and Europeans expected it to go on doing so. But Europe itself was far from united. Britain and France were the dominant imperial powers, and Germany and Italy were eager to overtake them. The rest of Europe was a patchwork quilt of quarrels and national jealousies. Germany was the success story of modern Europe. Its population doubled between 1870 and 1914, and by 1914 its production of iron and steel was greater than that of the rest of Europe. Germany felt it was justified in flexing its muscles and reaching out for empire, and it rearmed prodigiously between 1889 and 1914. By 1914 it had a formidable army, 15 times the size of Britain's and the most powerful artillery in Europe. Since 1897 it had also created a great navy. By 1912, the Germans possessed 20 modern battleships, compared with the dominant naval power, Britain, which had 30 dreadnoughts in European waters. Britain found Germany's naval build-up very threatening. In the summer of 1914, after years of tension, George V presided over the mobilization of the British fleet. Britain's allies, France and Russia, also mobilized against Germany and Austria-Hungary, the Central Powers. The Germans seized the pretext of Austria's quarrel with the Serbians to march into action against Russia and France. When the great powers honored their treaty obligations and paper commitments, the inconceivable happened. The whole of Europe was drawn into conflict. Enthusiastically and with eager expectations, the civilized world threw itself into war. The Germans' first move took the British and the French by surprise, a massive sweep through Belgium, bypassing Holland. Belgian resistance was overwhelmed, and the German advance became a procession. It brought German forces swiftly, as planned, onto the unprotected northern flank of the French, within reach of Paris. Across the Channel, the British Expeditionary Force was starting to embark. It was very small, but well-trained and equipped. The mood was buoyant. In Paris, anti-German feeling ran riot. German shops were looted and plundered, and the French public was regaled with horror stories about German atrocities in Belgium. Paris was in danger, and all the taxes were requisitioned to take troops forward to the Marne. Everybody expected it to be a war of movement, a war fought at the gallop, dominated by cavalry. Both the generals and the private soldiers underestimated the force of modern artillery and the importance of new weapons and tactics. In the early battles of the First World War, both sides threw all their troops forward into the crucible. The small British standing army was decimated almost at once. The casualties were frightening. Hundreds of thousands of men died in the first encounters. This was the war that tore the heart out of European youth. The first German rush into France took them to the Marne and nearly to Paris. Then the French counterattacked, and the Germans were pushed back and forced onto the defensive. 1914 ended with much of northern France and Belgium under German control. During the 19th century, the object of warfare was to outflank an opponent, using the cavalry charge to win ground and change direction quickly. In 1914, in the first major European war for more than 40 years, cavalry could do nothing against accurate long-range rifle fire and the machine gun. The machine gun had finally become a reliable and reasonably accurate weapon. Machine guns and light artillery cut advancing troops to pieces. The Germans discovered a new weapon, the spade, almost by accident. Once they dug in, they were able to shoot down Allied attacks with ease. The British and French hurled men forward against thick barbed wire and deep German trenches. Artillery was not yet accurate enough to cut the wire or to penetrate the elaborate underground shelters which the Germans built. The major early